Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to paint this Wisteria. Here is our beautiful reference, and the art supplies list you may find in the attachments below this post. So let's start. First we need to wet the canvas. So I'm using my flat brush and clean water. I just speeded up this video a little bit for you wouldn't spend your time watching how I'm wetting my canvas. All you need to do is to wet your canvas completely. And now I'm mixing dark violet with opera to get those really bright purple color, and with white massive brush strokes I'm painting the top of my canvas, wet on wet. So I'm using a really bright violet, but I'm painting wet on wet, and it flows a little bit and becomes lighter. Then I changed my color a little bit to the warmer, adding carmine, and made a few brush strokes of warmer pink, and then I'm adding some yellow, mostly it is yellow with just a little bit of purple in it, and adding a few really light yellow brush strokes. I'm doing this just to show those massive wisteria twigs which we have on the top of the canvas. We wouldn't have to paint every single tiny little flower to show those massive twigs. And now I'm doing just a few brush strokes showing couple of twigs flowing from the top, just like that, just to show their kind of shape with a really light violet. For we would have something on the background when we will be painting all those twigs, and we would have to paint like every single tiny little petal. And now we need to wait until all these will be completely dried. So mine is dried, and I'm going to start painting twigs. I'm using my round brush now, and I'm mixing opera with a little bit of carmine to get the really bright warm pink. If you look at the reference, we're going to paint now those very the longest twig, the very bottom of it. And if you look at it carefully, you see that the very bottom flowers, they have really warm, bright, kind of orange red color because of those bright sunlight which goes from the background. So I have started with them. And now I'm going to interrupt this video to show you the brush strokes I'm using. I'm using two kinds of brush strokes. First, it's when you touch the canvas with the point of your brush and then you press on it to make those kind of round edge like that, and then you lift it up like this. And it's not like this when you get those thin edges. You touch and you press really strongly, and then you lift it up, and it's really easy to make this way the petals which are from the left. And another one is when you touch with the point of your brush and you press on it in the end to get those other end really round like this. So you touch with a point and then you press and then you lift it up really fast. So now I'm going to work with this kind of brush strokes. You see, from one side I'm doing mostly the second kind of brush stroke, and from the left it is really easier to work with the first one I have shown you. And I started with the red flowers, and then I moved to the opera, so I added more of opera, and they are kind of more pink, while we're going to the top of the flower. And now let's do a few twigs for these flowers we have just painted, and I'm mixing my olive green with yellow and just doing, with the point of my brush, doing those kind of warm light green twigs between my flowers. The main stem, and then a few more stems which go from the flowers to those main stem. Like this. And now we will go back to the flowers, and we will paint a few more purplish, more violet flowers on the top of these we have just painted. So I'm mixing more violet color by adding violet red to my opera and painting a few more buds here. And while we are moving to the top of the twig, the buds become larger and they grow more often, so the twig becomes more fluffy. And now I'm adding a little bit more of dark violet to make it even darker and even more violet. And I'm going to change my color a little bit once in a while and paint those flowers closer one to another. And I'm using the same kind of brush strokes I have just shown you. The brush strokes are different sizes, some of them larger, some of them smaller, and some of them will be merging one to another because, as I said, there are more flowers while we go into the top of the branch. And I'm going to add some light flowers between those bright dark flowers I have already painted, and I'm using more water, but the same kind of colors. I'm showing those light flowers. I think they are open flowers, which we see between all those dark buds. And now I'm going to add just more of those really light brush strokes above those dark and bright I have just painted. So if you look at the branch, you see that the top of this branch is more light, is filled with more light flowers. So this is what I'm going to paint right now. And now I will add a few light strokes by each of those bright pink flowers just to show the light and to make the edges a little bit softer. I think this way they look better, and this way we're showing the light which goes from the background. And now let's move to another twig which is above this bottom one, and it's kind of behind it. And again I'm coming back to the dark flowers, but dark violet this time. If you look at the reference, you may see them there. And I'm moving to the top with the same kind of brush strokes, but paint them with dark violet. I have added a little bit more of dark violet to my color. And after I did a few of dark ones, I'm going to add some lighter between them. So I'm adding more water to my color and adding some lighter brush strokes. I have added a little bit more of ochre as well to change my color a little bit, not only the value but to change its hue a little bit to the warmer, for we wouldn't have all the same color around those branches, because there are so many different hues or shades of violet and pink and even yellow if you look carefully. But I didn't want to add any yellow here, even in the light, because this way we are losing this kind of purplish, pinkish, bright and fresh wisteria look. I tried to do it, but I didn't really like how it looks like, so I just limited my color palette to those pinks and purples. And now I have mixed two greens, as I usually do, and adding a few stems between my flowers. Just a few tiny stems which all go to the center, to those central main stem. Now let's add a few more flowers there on the top, and I'll be changing my color a little bit, but mostly it is lighter violet and lighter pink color. And I'm just adding a few more brush strokes. I change my color every 1-2 brush stroke of flowers. And now I'm moving to another branch, which is from the left from this one. And I'm going actually to start it from the bottom as well. I'm going to mix in a little bit of carmine and ochre to my color, but it won't be this red and this warm. for this branch, because I think it's nice if they will look a little bit different one from another. And it's actually a little shorter. I don't want to make them on the same line of the same length. So with this kind of dark red, I have painted a few bottom flowers, and now I'm moving to more purple and pink buds again, while I'm going to the top. And the same way, I'm working with all the same brush strokes, the same two kind of brush strokes I'm using, and making my flowers a little larger while I'm moving to the top, and a little lighter as well. And after I added a little more of light flowers on the top, I'm going to do the stem. The same way I mix it to greens and doing the main stem first, and then the shorter ones which go from the sides to those main stem. And I allow this paint to flow a little bit, painting it wet on wet and touching my flowers a little bit with those green, because I like this kind of flowings of the colors here. I think it looks really good when you paint these flowers like Wisteria, those flowing flowers. So I'm adding a few more flowers on the top. And now I want to show like those branches bending a little bit and growing from the large tree branch. So I'm painting those green stems on the top of each, which show how they bend a little bit. If you look at the reference, you may see the directions. And now I'm going to change my brush. I'm going to take the filbert brush, which allows to make larger brush strokes, and I'm mixing in some opera to my color, and with those wide but short brush strokes I'm showing another tweak with a little bit more abstract way. I'm not going to show each of its flower, but just a few brush strokes to show there is some kind of a branch. So very, very abstract, changing my color a little bit with every of the brush strokes. And I'm going to leave it just like that. Maybe a few more flowers here on the top, the lighter ones. And with the same kind of brush strokes, with the same filbert brush, I'm going to add a few darker flowers, darker strokes here on this purple part. And I'm making them darker on this darker side of my background, and then I'm making them lighter where the background is lighter. And they're just random brush strokes going in different directions. I'm applying with this filbert brush, and they are different with their value and hue a little bit, so you change the color a little bit every other brush stroke. And now I have changed my brush to the round again, mixed two greens, and really loosely and really with my free hand I'm adding a few strokes showing the leaves. And I made my color a little bit darker by adding some violet, and with the point of my brush I'm adding a few really dark stems between those leaves. And now I'm going to add some shadows in my branches, wet on wet, and this is going to be the last thing. So I'm mixing dark violet with some green I had already there, and wet on wet I'm adding a few, really few brush strokes right in the beginning of every flower, not every but some flowers, just a few brush strokes. We don't need too many of those dark areas. And I have added a little bit of opera and a little bit of red violet to my color, and adding a few more strokes with a slightly different color. And now I'm going to add a few more onto other branches, but not as many as we did in this one, because the first branch is going to be more contrast and more bright, and the others just need a little bit more contrast than I have, just to add some variations of value and color. And I guess that was it. Thank you for painting with me today, and I hope to see you next week. We are going to paint pink carnation flowers, and I got really beautiful references.